नेशनल इनकम, जिसे हम लोग आइडियली डिनोट करते हैं कैसे, that it is NNPFC, that is net national product at factory cost. And this can be estimated primarily by the three modes as derived from the concept of circular flow of income, that it can either be estimated through the value added by each producing enterprise or by the income generated on each step of circular flow, or when there is an income, then obviously the other party is incurring the expenditure. So income and the expenditure, they are just complementary to each other. So we can calculate the national income by these three methods, and in this session we will focus on the value added method. So before I enter into the nitty-gritties, डिटेल में जाने से पहले अगर हम समरी करें, so as per the value added method, we will calculate the gross value added. So what is this word gross value added? We will discuss here. But before we enter or discuss these details, हम एक बार ये वर्ड समराइज करें कि वैल्यू एडेड मेथड का समराइज फॉर्मूला क्या है. तो we will calculate the GVA MP of the primary sector, a primary sector word. तो जो वर्ड मैं यहाँ नोट करूंगा वो सारे के सारे यहाँ डिस्कस करेंगे. तो GVA MP डिस्कस करेंगे हम एक वर्ड, then we will discuss what is primary sector, what is secondary sector, and what is tertiary sector या service sector. So we will calculate the GVA MP of the primary sector, we will calculate the GVA MP of the secondary sector, we will calculate the GVA MP of the tertiary sector. And in this way, all the services and the goods produced will reach the consumers and the circular flow of income will be completed. And this way, we will arrive at the figure of GDP MP, or we can say that the sum total of the all the value added at the market price in an economy is the GDP MP. So I again repeat, the sum total of the all value added by all constituents of an economy, whether they are primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector, value calculated at the market price will constitute the GDP MP. Now, if we deduct the depreciation from here, then we will arrive at the net domestic product at the market price. And if we deduct the net indirect tax from here, NIT, जो भी economics के student हैं, they all understand what is net indirect tax, और पुराने सेशन पर डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. Then we will arrive at the NDPFC. And the difference between the NNPFC and the NDPFC is NFIA, the net foreign income from abroad. So if we add NFIA from here, so we will arrive at the NNPFC, that is the national income. So you can see here there's that these three adjustments have already been discussed in the concept when we carried on with the aggregates of the national income. And focus here will only be on what is gross value added MP at the primary sector level, secondary sector level, and the tertiary sector level. So before we move into this word gross value added, we should first focus on the word primary, secondary, and the tertiary sector. तो आप नोटिस करिए कि आप नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज को निकालेंगे. अब मान लो नेचुरल रिसोर्स की अगर बात करें तो कोल, पेट्रोलियम, आपने कोल की माइनिंग करी तो कंपनी है कोल इंडिया लिमिटेड. अब इसका काम क्या है कि ये नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज जो कोल है उसकी माइनिंग करती है. अब पेट्रोल है, कुछ कंपनी ऐसी हैं जो पेट्रोल का एक्सप्लोरेशन कर रही हैं, जैसे मान लो ONGC है, ऑयल इंडिया है. अब जो लोग इस तरह के नेचुरल रिसोर्स को परस्यू कर रहे हैं, जो उन्हें इकोनॉमी में लेकर आ रहे हैं, वो कहीं ना कहीं प्राइमरी सेक्टर। So primary sector is something which is bringing the fresh raw material in the form of natural resources into the economy, and they will constitute the primary sector. So they, in a way, provides the raw material. Now this raw material has to be converted into the finished good. तो अगर ONGC ने हमें लाके क्रूड ऑयल दिया, अब this crude oil has to be converted into petrol or the diesel, that is different petroleum products. So there has to be refineries. So those refineries who are converting the raw material into the finished goods. For example, अगर आपने एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर है तो उसमें कॉटन क्रिएट किया, तो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर विल बी प्राइमरी सेक्टर। लेकिन उस कॉटन से अगर आपको रॉ मटेरियल मानकर क्लॉथ बनाए तो जिसने कन्वर्जन किया, ये सेकेंडरी सेक्टर है। तो सेकेंडरी सेक्टर विल बी समवन हु विल कन्वर्ट द रॉ मटेरियल इनटू दिस फिनिश गुड्स। तो जो ये कन्वर्टर हैं वो सेकेंडरी सेक्टर है। और जो इन सब सेक्टर्स को सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं, सर्विस प्रोवाइडर जो हैं, वो कहीं ना कहीं टर्शरी सेक्टर है। फॉर एग्जांपल सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीन, सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनीज। तो अगर एक सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी है, मान लो इन्फोसिस, वो सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रही है, वो रॉ मटेरियल को गुड्स में कन्वर्ट नहीं कर रही है, वो कोई रॉ मटेरियल पैदा नहीं कर रही है। बट अगर ये नहीं होगी तो शायद इनका भी काम ना हो पाए, क्योंकि इनको इसके सॉफ्टवेयर की सर्विसेज की जरूरत है। तो दे आर फॉर एफिशिएंट production activities, they are for efficient management, they are for efficient conversion, they are for efficient operations management. So they can be used anywhere, but they are not falling into the above two categories, but they are contributing to the GDP in various ways, and that is what they constitute the tertiary sector. So we believe कि हर बिजनेस कहीं ना कहीं अपने लिए कुछ ना कुछ इनपुट लेकर आता है, और उस इनपुट को किसी ना किसी आउटपुट यानी कि फिनिश गुड्स में कन्वर्ट करता है। तो जब ये वर्ड यूज करते हैं आउटपुट, तो वो आउटपुट फिनिश गुड्स सोल्ड भी हो सकते हैं, और वो फिनिश गुड्स इन स्टॉक भी हो सकते हैं। तो बेसिकली दे आर द टोटल फिनिश गुड्स। बट अगर आपने उसको बेच दिया, देन वी यूज द वर्ड सेल्स। अगर आपने उसको स्टॉक में रख लिया, देन वी यूज द वर्ड क्लोजिंग स्टॉक। So when I use the word output, then I am basically denoting that the output will denote the sales primarily and the closing stock. But some people say कि जो एक पर्टिकुलर पीरियड का क्लोजिंग स्टॉक है, वो अगले पीरियड के लिए ओपनिंग स्टॉक भी। तो अगर एक पीरियड का क्लोजिंग स्टॉक 50,000 रुपीज है, और वो अगले पीरियड में 50,000 ओपनिंग स्टॉक बन गया, एंड विच हैज नाउ फॉर द नेक्स्ट पीरियड द क्लोजिंग स्टॉक इज 60,000, तो इफेक्टिवली नेक्स्ट पीरियड में आउटपुट 60,000 नहीं हुई, बिकॉज 50,000 तो ओरिजिनल आउटपुट थी। और अगर ये आउट क्लोजिंग स्टॉक नेक्स्ट पीरियड में 40,000 है, दैट इज नॉट द आउटपुट, बिकॉज एक्चुअली तो वो स्टॉक कंज्यूम कर गए। So basically, this has to be the increase in stock, or we use the word change in stock. And this change in stock, if should be ideally, the closing stock should be more than the opening stock, because it is adding to the output. And if it is vice versa somehow, that the opening stock is more than the closing stock, then this change in stock will be negative, and this will decrease the output. So we can summarize that output shall be equal to the value of sales plus the value of change in stock. Now, to create this output, whatever industry we are discussing will be having certain kind of input. तो अगर मैंने एग्जांपल दिया कि आपने कॉटन से क्लॉथ्स बनाए, तो एक पर्टिकुलर पीरियड में अगर आपने 5 लाख रुपए की सेल करी और 50,000 रुपए का क्लोजिंग स्टॉक था, और 20,000 रुपए का ओपनिंग स्टॉक था, तो बेसिकली जो आपकी आउटपुट है वो 530 है। बट आपने रॉ मटेरियल, ये कॉटन भी तो यूज किया, तो अगर कॉटन की जो वैल्यू थी जो आपने यूज करी वो 3,50,000 है, तो व्हाट दिस industry has contributed, that it has increased the value of raw material of 350 to an output of 530, which may become raw material for somebody else. So there is a value increase of 180, and this value increase is what you call the value of goods added, or we use the word gross value added. So we say that whatever the cotton or similar raw materials have been consumed, this difference denotes what extra expenditure has been incurred on the product. What extra expenditure has been incurred on the product. So एक 3,50,000 के क्लॉथ पर कंपनी ने इतना पैसा और खर्च करा, तो दिस इज व्हाट दे हैव कंट्रीब्यूटेड. दे हैव नॉट कंट्रीब्यूटेड दिस मच, दे हैव कंट्रीब्यूटेड ओनली this much. So that is why we say that the gross value added market price, simply known as the word value added, simply known as the word value added, denotes the value of output minus the value of the intermediate goods or intermediate consumption जो आपने करा रॉ मटेरियल उसकी वैल्यू. So we can say that value of the output will be equal to sales plus change in stock minus the value of the intermediate consumption, or we can also use the word value of the inputs, and that denotes the value added, and that is denoting the GVA MP. So if you see clearly that this concept of value added is also the basis on which the concept of VAT was based, that is the value added tax, and this has been developed into the current indirect tax regime of GST. So this whole concept is the basis on which the new GST regime has been created. Therefore, this concept of value added is the key for any economy to be successful, because it underlines that the value of just the output is not what that industry has contributed, because he has received certain contributions in the form of the input. So what additions they have made to their inputs is what they have added to the economy, and that is why we use the word value added. And therefore, value added is one of the very effective ways of calculating the GDP market price. And why the word market price? Because when you purchase the goods, say for rupees 1,000, and you are paying 10% taxes, so the cost coming it to be 1,100. So you are taking the value at the market price, not the factor cost, because you know that the market price will be equal to factor cost plus net indirect tax. On the same lines, so here the input will be taken as for 1,100, and hence when you are taking the output, so whatever is the selling price plus the taxes to be charged will constitute the market price, and hence this GDP MP denotes the value added, which will be adjusted for the depreciation, the net indirect tax, and the NFIA to arrive at the figure of NNPFC, that is national income. Now, in addition, we have to keep a note on the point that when we talk this word inputs or intermediate consumption, then we are not concerned whether this input is from inside the domestic territory or from outside the domestic territory. Because the total of the two, because it is from the outside the domestic territory, then this is what you call imports. And this is what you call the domestic purchases. So the total inputs shall be equal to total import plus total domestic purchases. So we can say that if the data says total inputs, if the data says total inputs, then inputs will not be taken separately because it has already been a part of the total inputs. And if we take the input separately, then there will be double counting. But if the data specifically differentiates between the domestic purchases and the non-domestic purchases, that is the imports, then we have to take the total of the two to arrive at the figure of the total imports. So if I say, for example, that primary sector has an input of 50,000 and an output of 80,000, then there will be GVAMP of 30,000 for the primary sector. The secondary sector, if has an input of 40,000 and the output of 70,000, then there will be a GVA of 30,000. And for the tertiary sector, if there is an input of 10,000 and the output is of 25,000, then there will be the GVMP of 15,000. This 75,000 will be our gross value added MP or GDP MP. And if we say that the depreciation is say 5,000, the net indirect taxes are say 10,000, then this 60,000 will constitute the domestic income, that is NDPFC. And if the net foreign income from abroad is 5,000, then we can say the 65 then constitutes the NNPFC, that is the national income. And in this way, we can calculate the national income by the concept of value added method.